Hello everyone. This week's Parsha is Parashat Vayakhel, but we're actually not going to be focusing on the Torah portion for this week. Instead, we'll be focusing on the special maftir. It's a Parashat Shekalim. This actually begins the first of four special parashot that we read for maftir, and they begin at the Shabbat before Rosh Chodesh Adar. And now, if you ask, well, Rosh Chodesh Adar was already a month ago. Why didn't we read this back then? That's because this year is a leap year, and therefore there are two Adars. And because Purim takes place in Adar Beit, that is the second Adar, that's where we take our cues from. So it's specifically this Shabbat before Rosh Chodesh Adar, in which we read Parashat Shekalim. So what is Parashat Shekalim? That's a good question. And by the way, this is all based on Rav Bernstein's Torah in his sefer that came out last year, Purim, Removing the Mask. It's fantastic. This is literally the very first chapter. So if you want to take a look inside, by all means, I'll attach a link if you'd like to purchase the sefer below. I don't get any proceeds, in case you're wondering. So here's what he has to say. So again, we're on Parashat Shekalim. So this is actually the very first part of last week's Torah portion, Kitisa, which talks about the process of gathering the machatzit shekel, the half shekel coin, from the entire Jewish people. One machatzit shekel per person. And so what's going on with this gathering of shekalim? What's all that meant for? So these shekalim, right, these coins are meant to fund the communal offerings that will be offered in the Beis HaMikdash, right, on the altar. And the reason why they need to come from everybody is because everyone needs to own equally these animals that will be offered on behalf of the public. So that's the idea. But what does that have to do with Rosh Chodesh Adar? Those two things seem completely unrelated. So on a purely halachic level, it's fairly straightforward. Every year, those funds need to be renewed. That is to say, in the temple treasury, the funds that are used to buy these communal offerings, they need to be renewed every year. So you can't use old money to purchase new offerings. So the money, say from this year, we're in 5779. So what we use from 5777 doesn't work. And since the Jewish New Year, by the way, begins in Nisan, that's a different topic, but the Torah at least relates it. The Jewish New Year begins in Nisan. Therefore, from Nisan, we need to use new funds. And because the process of collecting these shekalim takes about a month, we begin at Rosh Chodesh Adar. That's a purely halachic level. But there's something else going on. And Rav Bernstein draws our attention to this, and he quotes a Gemara in Megillah. And it says as follows, and because it's related to Purim. So as part of his plan to encourage Achashverosh to consent to annihilate the Jewish people, Haman offers to pay out money in compensation for their loss. And the pasuk says as following. This is Esther chapter 3 verse 9. V'aseret alafim kikar kesef eshkol lahavi el ginze hamelech. Right? I will weigh out 10,000 talents of silver for deposit into the king's treasuries. Now regarding this payment, the Gemara states in Megillah. So Amar Reish Lakish, Galui v'yadui lifnei misha Amar v'haya ha'olam she'atid Haman lishkol shkalim al Yisrael lefikach hikdim shiklehem l'shkalav v'haynu ditnan. This is what is taught. Ve'echad ba'adar mashmim al hashkalim. So said Reish Lakish, it was revealed and known before he who spoke in the world came into being that Haman would in the future weigh out shkalim for purposes of destroying the Jewish people. Therefore, he, God, preceded the shkalim of the Jews to those of Haman, and thus we learned in the Mishnah, which we just spoke about, on the first of Adar they proclaim regarding the collection of the shkalim. So in other words, not only do we have the halachic considerations of the fact that we need a month in order to collect these coins, but it's also based on the fact that the Jewish people give a half shekel to the Beis HaMikdash as an antidote for the silver talents Haman was prepared to weigh out for their destruction. How are those two things related? That is to say, how is it that the Jewish people donating for communal offerings, how does that counterweigh of what Haman does when he purchases the right to exterminate the Jewish people? That's the question. And in answer to this, Rav Bernstein gives a bit of context. What was the problem with the Jewish people back in the day that led to such an issue? So Haman actually tuned into this. When he was presenting this plan to exterminate the Jewish people, this is what he says. We're in chapter 3, verse 8, literally the pasuk right before. It says, Yeshno am echad mefuzar umforad ben ha'amim. There is one nation scattered and separate among all the nations. That's how Haman describes the Jewish people to Achashverosh. Now, what does this mean, mefuzar umforad? Scattered and separate. What do those two things mean? Is there a difference between the two? So Reb Shlomo Alkabetz, most famously the author of Lechadodi, so he comments and he says as follows, yes, they are different. When we say mefuzar, scattered, that's a geographical term. That is to say, the Jewish people are scattered all over the world, geographically. Meforad means we are emotionally distant from each other. It's possible, after all, if you have two brothers or brother and sister, two siblings, or husband and wife who are very closely related, they love each other very much, but they're at opposite ends of the globe, they can still very much love each other and be very emotionally connected to each other. Alternatively, there can be brothers who live side by side and they hate each other. But all the same, so that's what these two words are coming to tell us. Mefuzar means they're geographically separate. Meforad means they're emotionally distant. There's strife among the Jewish people. And the reason why Haman needed to say that was because Achashverosh is understandably worried about this idea of going to try and raise up arms against the Jewish people. Achashverosh points out, people who tend to raise up arms against the Jewish people tend not to live for too long afterwards. Things don't tend to end well for them. So as a result, Haman says, listen, that's true when they're unified in Eretz Yisrael and things are well with them. Things are not well with them and they're not unified. Things are bad. Don't worry about it. Just keep going ahead and everything will be well. And that, by the way, is why Esther Hamalka, when she comes and wants to present herself in front of Achashverosh to plead on behalf of the Jewish people, what does she say? The pasuk says, Lech knos et kol hayodim hanimtzaim b'Shushan v'tzumu alai. Go and gather all the Jews that are to be found in Shushan and fast for me. And the reason why this is so important is because notice what Esther is saying. She's like, unify them all, gather them all together, and make sure that they're all unified in this purpose, which is fasting on my behalf. What's beautiful about this is that the Jewish people here have to worry about somebody else. That is to say, Esther Hamalka, because even though it's true the Jewish people have a threat posed against them, this extermination order that was promulgated by Achashverosh, even so, that's in the distant future. Esther Hamalka is now going in front of Achashverosh. She's not allowed to do that without permission, without Achashverosh calling for her. Therefore, the fact that Esther was doing this, she was risking her life. So Esther was saying, listen, your threat is a while away. I have a threat right now, so fast for me. Don't think about yourself, think about me. What's beautiful about this is that Esther then says, Gam ani v'narotai atzum kein. Also, I and my maids will fast similarly. That is to say, just as you're fasting for me, I and my maids will fast for you. And that's what goes on. So we see the way of rectifying the situation of Haman's order is this idea of unifying together, of worrying about other people, about worrying about each other, more than we worry about ourselves. And this is the message we get from the half shekel. After all, Rav Bernstein points out that the word mitzvah translates as commandments, but often they embody ideas and ideals. Right? They're there to teach us values. And the value that is taught from the Machzir Shekel is that it is this lesson of unity that is communicated through the half shekel. After all, the Jewish people are united in this holy endeavor, right? They're all trying to contribute in order to bring the korbanot, right? In order to bring the offerings. And what's beautiful about this is it doesn't matter who's wealthier or who's less wealthy, right? If someone has 10 million shekalim and one person has just 5, the contribution is equal. It's a half shekel per person. Everyone has the way Rav Bernstein says is all contributions are equal, equally valuable, and equally valued. They're all necessary, no matter what your social standing is. And moreover, each person does not contribute a whole shekel. They contribute half a shekel. That means to say that your contribution is only part of the whole. And therefore, you're meant to see yourself as part of the whole, and hopefully you'll unite in order to become the whole. And that is the meaning behind the Gemara statement that the antidote to Haman's 10,000 talents of silver was the half shekel. Because it's the theme of unity that permeates this Machzir Shekel, this Parashat Shekalim, that is meant to serve as a lesson for how we're to rectify the situation that brought us into the disaster that was the original Purim scenario. But of course, things went well, and Shabbat Shalom.